What if fasting is one of the most powerful spiritual disciplines in Scripture, and most Christians are missing the very reason God asked them to do it? Not because they are insincere, but because they were never told what fasting is actually for. You have probably fasted believing that something would shift on the other side of it. But what if the shift was never supposed to happen out there and was always supposed to happen in here? Most of us learned fasting as a single transaction. Skip food, press God, wait for a breakthrough. But that is only part of the picture, because somewhere along the way, fasting became something we do to God instead of something we do before Him. We use it like a lever when prayer alone is not working, when the answer has taken too long, when we need results and we need them now. Scripture tells a different story. Fasting was never designed to move God toward you, it was designed to move you toward God. And those two things are not the same fast at all. Before you fast, there's one truth you need to understand first. If you miss this, everything else about fasting becomes easy to misunderstand. Here's the first truth. Fasting is not a strategy, it is a surrender. Before Ezra led thousands of exiles through dangerous wilderness territory, he called the people together. No military escort, no political protection, just a people, a road, and a God he trusted more than both. He proclaimed the fast, and this is what he said about it, that we might humble ourselves before our God and ask of him a safe journey. Ezra 8:21. Humble ourselves. Not present our case, not remind God what was at stake, humble ourselves. The fast was not Ezra negotiating with heaven, it was Ezra releasing his grip on the outcome and placing both hands in God's direction. That is the first purpose of fasting in Scripture, not to force God's hand, but to open yours. Fasting at its core is the physical act of saying, I need you more than I need this. And when that's not at the center, when the surrender is missing, you are not fasting. You are dieting with religious intention. But surrender is only the beginning, because God is not simply looking at what you give up. He's looking at what's happening inside you while you fast. And that brings us to the second truth. God sees what the fast cannot hide. There's a moment in Isaiah 58 that every person who has fasted and felt nothing needs to read slowly. A people came to God with this complaint. Why have we fasted and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves and you have not noticed? Isaiah 58:3. They were faithfully fasting, genuinely frustrated, and God's answer was not gentle. He told them their fasting had become a day of conflict and exploitation. They were abstaining from food on the outside while holding on to injustice on the inside. And then he said something that redefines fasting entirely. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice, to set the oppressed free, to share your food with the hungry. Isaiah 58:6-7. God was not changing the subject. He was revealing that fasting was always about more than the stomach. It was about what the fast was supposed to produce. A heart that opened, hands that released, a life that began to resemble the God it claimed to be seeking. The fast God honors is not the one that skips the most meals. It's the one that shows up differently in everything that happens between the meals. And now we come to the deepest truth of all. Everything we've talked about has been leading here. Jesus himself revealed it in the wilderness. Here is the third truth. Fasting does not change God, it reveals you. When Jesus was led into the wilderness to fast, he had just heard the Father's voice at his baptism. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. He wasn't fasting to earn that, he already had it. He fasted because something about removing food strips away every layer of comfort we use to avoid seeing what we actually depend on. And when the enemy arrived after 40 days, every temptation carried the same hidden invitation. Command these stones to become bread. Matthew 4:3. Satisfy yourself. You have the power. You do not have to wait on God for this. And Jesus answered with a line that could only come from someone who had spent 40 days learning to live without the things that usually fill the space where God should be. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Matthew 4:4. In the wilderness, hunger exposed the question the enemy was really asking. What do you trust when everything else is gone? And fasting is what made the answer clear. When you remove food, you remove the daily comfort of self-sufficiency. In that empty space, what you actually depend on rises to the surface. Fasting does not create a new version of you, it reveals the one that was already there and brings you to the place where God can meet what he finds. Before your next fast, First, settle your intention before you set your start date. Not what you want God to do, what you want God to change in you. Write it in one sentence and keep it visible. Second, let hunger become a signal, not just a sacrifice. Every time your body reminds you it's fasting, turn that moment toward prayer or scripture. The craving was never only physical. Let it point you back to the one your soul is actually seeking. Third, name what you are carrying before you begin. Isaiah 58 connects fasting to release, the unforgiveness, the fear that hasn't been surrendered, the habit still being protected. Name it. Bring it into the fast. Fast from that alongside the food. Fasting is not a tool to unlock God. He's never been locked. It's the slow, deliberate act of removing everything you have placed between yourself and the God who was already close. Every skipped meal is a small declaration that this hour with Him is worth more than comfort, more than control, more than anything your hands would normally reach for. And when fasting comes from that place, it doesn't simply change what you eat, it changes what you hunger for. And what you hunger for always shapes who you become. Before your next fast, which of these three truths do you most need to carry into it? Fasting as surrender, fasting with an open heart, or fasting to see clearly what you've been depending on? Leave your answer in the comments. I read every one. If this changed the way you think about fasting, watch the next video on what to do before you pray. Fasting is not the beginning of God moving, it's the beginning of you finally getting out of the way.